On today's show, the Capitals fall in the first game of the regular season. Who stood out? What went wrong with that third line for the Capitals and an injury to Matt Roy? I'll discuss next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about how the Caps fall in the first game of the regular season. Ultimately, not the outcome that we were looking for. There were some good points to the game. There were some bad points, but at the end of the day, the Capitals walk away with an L. What went wrong? I'll talk about that a little bit later. I'll talk about the mess at third line. It was so bad that Spencer Carberry benched that line, and they did not get a whole lot of activity in this game. And then in the final segment, I'll talk about how Matt Roy injured. It's interesting that we talk about that there's so many options at the blue line. Well, it's going to stand to reason that we might need to tap into some of that extra talent. I'll talk about that. But just to get it going here, talking about that loss in the first game of the regular season. And it was a bit awkward as the Capitals didn't play for a whole week. There was a week between the last preseason game in the first game of the regular season. Inevitably, there was some rust. Spencer Carberry and his staff had to get creative and actually have some practices at Capital One. And then you take a look at the New Jersey Devils, who had already played a few games. They were all go. They were full speed ahead, and I think the Capitals were caught flat-footed a little bit. So it's a difficult thing to go through. Ultimately, there was some good. I'm not here to say that the game was all negative, and I'll break it down a bit more in detail later. But all things considered, a W or an L, the Capitals start the season with a loss, and ultimately not what we're looking for. The biggest takeaway from the season opener was the strong start with an early 1-0 lead, and Capital One was rocking as it was the 50th anniversary. There was this big pre-game ceremony that went on and on, but a cool moment to see some Capitals players that I had not seen in quite some time, and to see them all in the same area together. It was a fun evening as a Capitals fan. However, defensive issues and lapses, especially with the third line, allowed the New Jersey Devils to mount a comeback and ultimately win the game 5-3. Despite the loss, though, there was notable individual performances such as Carlson's power play goal, Ovechkin's physical presence, and Lindgren's key saves. The team also faced challenges with injuries, which I'll talk about in the third segment, as defenseman Matt Roy had to leave the game early. Moving forward, the Capitals will need to address those defensive lapses, improve the power play, and overcome injury setbacks as they prepare to face the Vegas Golden Knights soon. So there's not a lot of time to lick their wounds, as the next game is Tuesday evening against the Vegas Golden Knights. And it's one of the things that, it would have been great for them to pick up a win, that positive momentum to set them off on the right foot, to feel like, those big moves that we made in the offseason, they weren't for naught, that they're going to pay dividends. And to be fair here, they did. I think that we got a good look at Pierre-Luc Dubois, and I am impressed from what I saw thus far. Chikrin out there also looked good. And then, my hopes dashed a little bit with Matt Roy getting injured so early in the game. But the players that came out to play are the ones that, historically always come up to play. Dylan Strome, John Carlson, Tom Wilson, all finding the back of the net. So, you got to take the good and the bad, but ultimately at the end of the day, the Capitals start their season with a loss. But breaking down the game in particular, the early stages of the game, John Carlson scored a power play goal to give the Caps a 1-0 lead. However, the team found themselves trailing the Devils after the first period due to defensive issues, particularly with the third line and in front of the goaltender, Charlie Lindgren. And those defensive miscues in particular, missed reads, is what Tom Wilson spoke about, is ultimately what was the demise of the Capitals. And I'll talk about later in the show about the third line. But to be fair here, listen, there were blue liners out on the ice as well. The forwards can't do it all. And ultimately, the Capitals drop the first game. They're hoping that they can address what went wrong, primarily the third line, but not just the third line, so they can give themselves the best chance at winning against the Golden Knights. Scoring summary, Dylan Strome quickly equalized for Washington, scoring just 32 seconds into the second period. However, Thomas Tatar responded for the Devils, scoring a hard-fought goal to make it 3-2. So Dylan Strome is that guy last season to start the season, led the team in goals. After Alex Ovechkin got off to that slow start, Dylan Strome was the guy that took the bull by the horns and was the one getting production. What did I notice about Dylan Strome is he looks just as good this season as he did last season. So I have no worry about what Dylan Strome will bring to this team. Talking about team efforts and contributions in a critical moment with their team down by 2, the second forward line showcased an impressive display of forechecking, resulting in a goal by Tom Wilson to narrow the gap. Connor McMichael and Pierre-Luc Dubois aggressively pursued the puck, with McMichael ultimately winning a crucial board battle and delivering a slick no-look pass to set up the Wilson goal. Despite a late push by the Capitals, they fell short as Dawson Mercer sealed the game with an empty net goal. Both Alex Ovechkin and Pierre-Luc Dubois contributed to the score sheet by each registering an assist. And that was one of the things. Quite a few comments from the people that listen and or watch this show about what my thoughts were on Alex Ovechkin. I would like to see a whole lot more. He started the game being that bull in the china shop with delivering a heavy hit. And we need to see a whole lot more from him than that. But ultimately, bringing the physicality is, a good thing for him. As, we're taking a look at the team. I talked about Tom Wilson. I'm talking about different players. I'm talking about McElrath, that they need that physical presence. But at the end of the day, that's all good. But what we want from Alex Ovechkin is to score goals, and maybe not to be quite so predictable this season. For the longest time, he has been able to set up shop from his office with great success. And he still gets that success from time to time. But I think that if they can shake up the snow globe a little bit better and have him set up in front of the net, which we saw a bit in the preseason games, or even towards the last part of last season where they were trying to shake it up a little bit more, having him set up more towards the blue line, that I think that it kind of throws the opponent off guard. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that, Ovechkin has had that success from the left dot, but the teams are prepared on it. That is not a new thing that Alex Ovechkin is doing. And the thing of it is, Alex Ovechkin is 39 years old now. That shot isn't quite as lethal as it once was. And, that's what I'm talking about. You're going to have to shake it up a little bit as the netminders are bigger. And they're prepared ultimately at the end of the day. But talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois, that was one of the bright spots. Pierre-Luc Dubois made a strong impression despite the team not securing a victory. The 26-year-old center impressed head coach Spencer Carberry and his teammates by contributing an assist, 2 shots, 3 attempts, 1 hit, and 1 block shot during his 17:29 of play. Carberry praised Dubois, describing him as one of the standout players during Saturday's game. Here. I agree with that. And, I know it's one game, but in that one game, he played very well. So if he's taken the applause, he's got to take the arrows and vice versa. If he had played poorly, he would have heard about it. So let's hear about Pierre-Luc Dubois stepping up and playing a big role for the Capitals despite there not being a victory to talk about. On the positive side, the Capitals' penalty kill was flawless, going 4 for 4 and creating several shorthanded scoring opportunities against the Devils. The team's strong puck possession allowed them to draw penalties and effectively kill off the clock. The power play, however, showed room for improvement. So just taking a look at it, like I put out a video after the game, I'm going to chalk this one up to rust. Tom Wilson said missed plays, missed reads, rust at the end of the day. If you're going to summarize what he was saying, the team was their timing was a little off and a little bit rusty, despite the fact that they were playing preseason games. I don't think it fully prepares you for what it means to play in the regular season. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about what went wrong. The third line, and it wasn't just the third line. What needs to get cleaned up before Tuesday? I'll discuss straight ahead. Guys, sometimes intimate moments happen spontaneously, and we always want to be ready so we can perform in the bedroom. Hims provides access to treatments that can help you stay hard and last longer, giving you that boost of confidence so you can be ready whenever the mood strikes. Your sex life is important, but your schedule is busy. You don't have the time to go to the doctor's office to get treated for ED. Through Hims, you can get personalized ED treatment without stepping outside of your door, and it makes it so convenient. Life is busy. Take care of the important things. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable, compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Prices varies based on product and subscription plans. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure and join the Locked On Capitals Insiders. There's a link in the show description. So talking about what went wrong, and the third line was the most glaring deficiency. And it's interesting that third line was the one that was in play, like the first line, the second line, the fourth line. The deep pairings were pretty much all written in pen. The third line, however, was written in pencil, and you need one of those fat erasers to try to figure out who was going to be in there. Now, we knew that LaPierre was going to be there in there, and Protas was going to be in there as well. But the question remained, who was going to start the game at third line left wing? Was it going to be Jacob Vrana, the guy that came to the team on the professional tryout, or was it going to be Sonny Milano? Well, what did the Capitals do? They decided to go with Sonny Milano because he earned it and that he kind of has the reps in. And Spencer Carberry and the coaching staff made the call. That's who they want to have. Now, this cannot rest squarely on Sonny Milano's shoulders. However, you got to think that Spencer Carberry is going to shake things up before the next game. Is there the chance that we see Jacob Vrana in the next game? Yeah, you better believe it. Now, stranger things have happened, but if I was the head coach of the Capitals, I would definitely try to fix the line that caused the most problems. That third line was on the ice for the New Jersey Devils' first 3 goals. That's a -3 if you're keeping track at home. So that is not a good position or a good look for the Capitals to be in. And you take a look at LaPierre in particular. we knew that we needed to see more from him. And it just didn't seem cohesive. That third line was getting outworked by the New Jersey Devils. There's no ands, ifs, or buts about it. That line was glaringly deficient. And that's the third line. You take a look at it, the fourth line is supposed to be the line that's not some of the greatest players, but for the Capitals, it is. They definitely need to shore that up before they take on the Golden Knights. Defensive lapses and goalkeeping, the combination of Sonny Milano, Henrik Slop-Pierre, and Alexei Protas allowed the opposing team to score 3 goals due to miscommunication and defensive lapses, leading to missed coverages and scoring opportunities that the New Jersey Devils capitalized on. That is a team that many people are favoring to do great things this upcoming season. I believe it. They have a new head coach, Sheldon Keefe. They're looking pretty good. I think that ultimately Sheldon Keefe got the short end of the stick by the Toronto Maple Leafs. And, the Toronto Maple Leafs is, if we don't win, heads are going to roll. And, that was the case. I think that Sheldon Keefe is actually a really good head coach. And I think that the New Jersey Devils are going to benefit. And I think that they are one of the teams that's going to be markedly better in the Metro this coming season. Talking about Carberry, he said, the first 3 shifts, they're on the ice, and it's in the back of the net, Carberry said. It's a tough night. You can look at the goals that they were on there for. You can break little things down. What happened about the third line, Carberry said he tried to help them by benching that line for the remainder of the game. That is what you're going to go ahead and call some tough love. You have those nights where no matter what you do and no matter how hard you try, it ends up going the other way. And that was what it felt like on that line tonight. It didn't matter how hard they tried. They were just going to end up in the back of the net. Face palm ×3 for the Capitals' third line. Got to fix it. I'm not a professional hockey player, but if I make mistakes in my life, whether it's professional on the show, I feel horrible about it after. I would like to think that these guys, I don't wish them to feel horrible. I just want them to fix what went wrong. So it was a tough thing. And ultimately, what was going right for the Devils? Cotter scored a second goal in the second period, extending the Devils' lead following a turnover in the neutral zone by Pierre-Luc Dubois, resulting in a 2-on-1 situation and an effortless goal for the Devils. Lindgren made several key saves. I think all things considered, Lindgren played pretty well. I'm sure that there were some that he would like to have back, but with those defensive missed assignments, etc., I think that we can put the blame squarely on his shoulders. Talking about including for Lindgren, stopping a couple of breakaways and ended the game with 21 saves on 25 shots. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't think that we could ask for anything more from him. I know that we can't. And hearing comments out there about what Tom Wilson thought. Tom Wilson commented on the team's performance, acknowledging the need to address certain areas of play and team dynamics. He noted the team's lack of recent group play and the presence of many new team members. Wilson observed that the opponents had played 3 games already, while also recognizing the positive and negative aspects of their own performance in the first game. He emphasized the importance of analyzing the game to make necessary adjustments for future matches. Got to fix it. That's Tom Wilson's way of saying, yeah, we made some mistakes. We got to play better. Third line, I'm putting the spotlight squarely on you. You need to play better. But, to be fair, it wasn't just that. It wasn't just those 3 players out on the ice. There were 2 defenders and a netminder, but ultimately they got to do a better job. Talking about what Carberry said, I thought our penalty kill was excellent. However, the coach remarked, we even managed to draw a penalty on that late one, which nullified their power play and put that on us. We had a couple of good opportunities, including some rush chances. I thought we did a really good job shorthanded. The power play came through with a huge goal, and we had some good looks on the second one as well. So some good, some bad, but the glaring thing that went wrong in the game for sure was that third line. And it's interesting, like I talked about to start the show, that was the line that we knew was not the strong suit for the Capitals. Again, do they plan on putting Jacob Vrana in there? If I was the head coach, yeah, that's probably what I would do. It's at least worth a look, unless there is some sort of inside analytics out there that indicate otherwise. That is definitely what I think the Capitals should do. But all they can do, like I said, is lick their wounds off as they prepare for action again Tuesday night. All right, so coming up here after the break, bad news. It's funny that I talked about all the depth on the blue line. Well, it looks like the Capitals will probably have to tap into some of that talent. I'll discuss straight ahead. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Now, listen, there is a lot of football being played on any given Sunday or Monday or Thursday, and some of the games you're a little bit more into. If it's a Commanders or Ravens game, you're already into that. But say it's a weekend where your teams aren't playing, how about open up the FanDuel app, put a little bit of money on those games? All of a sudden, they got that much more exciting. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Would you like to leave me a voicemail for the show? I have a new link in the show description where you can leave me a voicemail. And as long as you keep it clean and not too long of a voicemail, I'll have it on one of the next shows. All right, back in this segment here, we're going to talk about injuries. Now, the injuries are a tough thing for the Capitals, as it's something in seasons before have reared their ugly head and kind of derailed the Capitals. Think a couple seasons ago when John Carlson took that puck right off the melon. That the Capitals' blue line defense, their depth was put to the test. At that time, it was Gustafsson and these other players that tried to live up to potential. But, you take a look at last season, John Carlson was the guy for the Capitals on the blue line that on a regular basis logged anywhere between 25 and 30 minutes a night. And that's not sustainable for John Carlson. That's not sustainable for the Capitals. And it's interesting that even though despite these new players added to the team, he still logged a lot of minutes. I know that Matt Roy got injured, and that is what we're going to talk about here next, is the injury to Matt Roy. A tough break for the Capitals, as he was the guy that was supposed to alleviate a lot of that pressure off of John Carlson. So the Capitals did make some big moves this past off season by trading for and getting Chychrun, getting Matt Roy, and then the additions of players that made the team. I'm talking about Dylan McElrath. I'm talking about Alex Alexiev. That it's interesting that they had two extra defenders, and it does appear that they are going to have to go with one of them when the Capitals play on Tuesday. Again, I am recording this on Sunday evening at 10:08 p.m. Eastern. We could learn a lot. Tomorrow we could learn a whole lot, and of course I'll have you guys covered. But right now, if there was a game tonight, they would definitely have to tap into some of that depth. But ultimately, disappointing, I guess I'm going to say. The Capitals faced a setback during their season opener as defenseman Matt Roy sustained a lower body injury and had to leave the game early in the second period. And it was a fast-moving game. And it was one of the things that I did notice, but I guess I didn't notice that he didn't come back. It was one of the things that Joby and Locker, they're like, hey, we haven't seen him out on the ice in quite a while. And then it was known that he left the game and did not return. Lower body injury, that is all we know. This left the team with only five defensemen for the remainder of the game. In his Capitals debut, the player skated for just 8 minutes 39 seconds before sustaining an undisclosed injury that forced him out of the game. Despite registering 2 shots, he ended the game with a -2 rating. So a tough break. And as we take a look at it, injuries right away. And I guess, you take a look at it, there's teams that are facing similar situations. You saw Laine getting injured in the preseason, Doughty. Those are just the 2 players off the top of my head, that injuries are just a part of the sport. It's if your team has that needed depth, you can rise to the challenge and overcome. And again, it's a good thing that the Capitals do have options on the blue line. I talked about McElrath, I talked about Alexia, but we're also talking about Vincent Iorio, these kind of players as well, players that we're vying for roles, Chase Prisky, these kind of players that even when things hit the fan, that you have options. It's not like, well, I have number one and number two, and if either number one or two get injured, well, all hope is off. That is not the position for the Capitals, as they have a lot of depth. Now, are they all going to be on par with Matt Roy? No. But again, as I record this later in the evening on Sunday, we don't know how much time he's going to miss. I've heard whiffs. I've heard rumblings out there from different people that it could be serious. Now, don't take that to the bank, as it was not from any notable source, but I've heard, sticking my finger to the air and sticking my ear to the microphone a little bit, that I guess I've heard from different sources that it could be a longer injury. So a tough break if, in fact, he is going to miss a substantial amount of time, and ultimately not what we're looking for as Capitals fans to start the year. We want this team firing on all cylinders. We're talking PLD, Mangiapane, we're Chychrun, Roy, Logan Thompson, to see what this team has. It's unfortunate that one of those key additions is already injured. Let's just cross our fingers and toes that it's not for a lengthy period of time. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank you for making it your first listen of the day. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.